Thank you. Hi, this is Colorful Foresight, where we intuitively connect from within. And it's woo woo time, where we connect our woo woo into our mundane living. Woo woo woo!
Ooh.
So I'm Silvia, Colorful Foresight, and here we have Septina from the Tipsy Tea Leaf Oracle. It's kind of like a last minute thing, but not the topic. It's woo woo even for me. It's something we've been talking about for about 2 weeks. And so she had some interesting story. We're gonna go with it, but she's gonna tell us. We even have like a video to show, and then we'll go from there. So who's saying hello this morning?
Carmel, the lovely Carmel, all the way from Italy, Sicily.
Nice to meet you, Carmel. I'm Italian myself, American Italian though. My parents both were born in Italy, Rome. So nice.
And you're both Capricorns.
Oh, yes.
His birthday was on the weekend, and yours is today. Let's all wish Silvia a happy birthday.
This year I'm going to be better at my woo. And there are certain things with my woo I need to end. Like I've told Septina about the true love journey that I've been on, but it's all energetic. And even if it was real, if it doesn't land after years, it could play with your mind. So I had to end
Yes.
it in order to get healthy. Because part of the woo is following things energetic and it's real. But eventually, if it doesn't land and it start being unhealthy, where you don't know if it's real, not real, and all that, I give it to divine and I let it go.
Very good. That's
Thank
the best
you,
way.
Carmel. Nice to meet you, by the way. And hi, Teresa. No, my family from Rome, so they're in the middle, but they're in the suburb. They're not like in the city of Rome. But it's all good. Same country.
Roam if you want to. Roam
Roam
around
around
the
the world.
world. First song of the day. There's Sylvia's birthday song for the day.
That's awesome.
So Sylvia texted me and said, "Are you available for an impromptu birthday reading? And do you have suggestions on what we can talk about?" So I said to Sylvia, "Why don't we do the video we had to cancel when I was still sick or too sick to do it?" So we have a really special ghost story from my family that has a lot of practical evidence of how this ghost story came to be. Now, I'd like to just say there is a trigger warning for anybody who gets triggered from World War II, world war stories, okay? Because there's a lot of that going on in the world right now. I want to make sure everyone is comfortable that we are going to be discussing World War II and some of the atrocities that happened in order to build up the story that goes with it.
Thank you. I was gonna say this came in a perfect timing because I was dealing with something where I thought it was a woo experience, and it likely is a woo, but sometimes even within the woo experience, where you could say, "I know that was for real," sometimes there are things that make it like maybe that wasn't real. So that I'm gonna save in another video, but it's perfect for this time because she's gonna talk about her father, who was a skeptic. And so it's no mistake. It's no mistake. And this is important, especially for 2024. Got to know when it's a woo, when it's not the woo. And sometimes it is a woo, but you have evidence that look like it's not a woo. So it's all an art. It's the art of just being human and also for your spirituality.
Right.
Okay. And I'm glad we have all Septina friends here.
MKRP4 is a very talented masculine who lives in a sunny part of the USA, and he's somebody who has worked the kind of jobs that my father has worked, including in the foundry. Very difficult job. There were not a lot of jobs that my father could work because of the type of education that was available to him in the north of England, because my father is what is known as a blitz baby.
Mm.
Babies who were born in England during the Blitz. Now, what is the Blitz? We're going to learn about that because I have sent Silvia some links. But first, to lead up to this story, before we show the first link, which is in Wikipedia, my father was born September 1st, 1941. His mother's entire pregnancy, his mother was Septina Smith the First. I was named after her.
Whoa.
Her entire pregnancy was living in fear of Hitler's bombs because the Blitz began in 1940 and ended midway through 41. So this was what his whole birthing process was about. She already had his older brother and his older sister. And while he was being born, it was just his mother, Septina, and him and the midwife in the house. Everyone else was in the bomb shelter in the backyard because there was another air raid warning while he was being born. Now, if Silvia can now go over to presenting the Wikipedia link, we're
And
gonna
you can read over it.
Redbeard, your dad hid under the table during the Blitz, you see? And
I'm loving.
Funny thing, Redbeard, part of our story, the ghost story that we're going to get to, involves hiding under a table. Oh,
No, isn't it funny? And I love the Macklin in here. Thank you for showing up.
yes.
Here we go. You can read.
Redbeard will know the story that I'm discussing. So if we scroll down to where it says 1941, I can't read it because the screen is too small. But if you could read that part.
Are you not able to see the screen?
It's so small. Maybe if I make full screen, I can read it. Okay, now I can see it because I know what parts to read. Okay, so in 1941, a raid on the 1st of September 1941, this is exactly as my father was being born, caused a major fire on the New Bridge Street goods station, which burned for a week. The raid left 50 dead, 71 seriously injured, and 140 slightly injured, and 1,000 people homeless. Now, in that time, I mean, in that portion where 150 were left homeless, those were the residential homes that were bombed. And you can come away from that screen now, Silvia. Okay. Now, among those homes that were bombed, one of them had 2 nurses living there because they were bringing nurses in over to England. They were training them in other countries. I met one of the women. I was a personal support worker for her. She was in her 90s, and she was from Austria, and she was trained as a nurse and brought over to England during those days. So these 2 nurses were told to exit their homes. This was just a few blocks away from where my father was being born. So a few blocks away is where the bombs hit. They were safe a few blocks away in my father's neighborhood. Half the house got bombed. If you look at the pictures, you will see a lot of it was, the buildings were left standing, but half demolished, you know? And as these 2 nurses were grabbing their suitcases and packing everything and coming down the stairs, the bomb hit that half of the house, and they were killed instantly. How do we know this very detailed story? Because when my father was about 4 years old, so we're skipping ahead to 1945 or 46, they moved over to that neighborhood because it was rebuilt. A lot of these neighborhoods had to go through a rebuild. And now they had an even bigger family because now there was a younger sister added on. 4 kids. So they moved into that house that was rebuilt. If you could now go over to the link where we're going to show, I'll tell you when to stop the video. We're not going to watch the whole thing. It'll give you an idea, a visual of what we're talking about.
Okay. Hold on. Make sure the screen is big.
I'll go to big screen. Actually, I don't need to because everybody can just watch it. I don't need to say anything.
Okay. So here's the green. Where you want to go toward?
Just hit play, and then I'll tell you when to stop it.
7th of September 1940 to 11th of May 1941. World War II. Adolf Hitler and Hermann Göring's plans to destroy the RAF so that Britain could be invaded was failing. So on the 7th of September 1940, Germany started bombing civilian targets in an attempt to get Britain to surrender into submission. German bombers attacked British cities, ports, and industrial areas. This was known as the Blitz, a short form of the German word Blitzkrieg, meaning lightning war. London was the main target of the bombing raids, but Birmingham, Southampton, Sheffield, Manchester, Liverpool, Hull, and Glasgow were also targeted. One devastating attack on Coventry on the 14th of November 1940 saw 500 German bombers dropping 500 tons of high explosives and nearly 900 incendiary bombs on the city in 10 hours of relentless bombardments. So what would you do during an air raid? If an approaching attack was coming,
Okay, and you can stop here.
you would stop what you were doing.
Now, they didn't mention Newcastle upon Tyne or Tyneside in that video, but Tyneside was definitely hit. That's where my father was born and raised. That's closer to Scotland, which would have been involved where they mentioned Glasgow, which is in Scotland. So that's that north part, because clearly bombing London was not working. So now they're like, let's go to the common poor folk a little further north. So having said that, let's get to the woo-woo. What do you say?
Well, you're saying that your father survived, right?
Oh, yes, the whole family survived. So now we're going to get to the woo-woo story part of it.
Go ahead.
I've discussed the nurses who were leaving and were killed in the house. Now his family has moved over to this house, which has been rebuilt as a council home. And it's quite a nice home. And I actually got to spend 2 weeks, I think, a week or two in that house myself, my sister and I. We didn't see any ghost activity, but we had known the story already by this point. And we would bug each other just to scare each other, like hide around a corner when the other one's coming out. Blah! And we go, oh, because we were already on edge, right? Because my uncle remained living in the home. He never married, and he stayed there, took care of my grandmother, Septina, until she died.
Oh,
yeah. And he always said, I'll never be married. I'm going to stay with my mother. And he lived and died in that house as well. So anyways, the house is now sold. They sold the house. And anyway, my father is now, he was between age 4 and 6. I'm not sure. So 1945 or 46, the whole family was going about their day as usual. And they said, well, where's George? Where's George? They can't find George, this 5-year-old boy. But it wasn't uncommon for kids to go running around in the neighborhood. In fact, my father was very hungry a lot of the time, and he would go into farmers' fields by himself to steal a turnip. And he would he would brush the dirt off the turnip and just take bites out of this raw turnip.
Wow.
So they thought maybe he went running to steal food from the farmers' fields again. They couldn't find him. Now, you know what the British say. There's this common term that's been made huge. Keep calm and drink tea. So when they were, contemplating, do we call the authorities at this point? Okay, let's discuss it around tea. So they made the tea, they brought it to the dining table, and they pulled out the chairs to sit down. As they pulled out the chairs, which the tablecloth was over top of the chairs, my father fell. He was laying across the chairs under the table, and they couldn't see him there because the tablecloth was covering the chairs, and he was passed out asleep. And they said, well, what the heck? Why were you under there? Why were you sleeping on the chairs in the middle of the day? And that's when he told them he was scared to death because he saw the ghosts of 2 ladies coming down the stairs holding suitcases.
Oh my gosh. The woo-woo.
He didn't know the story. He was too little. That's
Right.
when they told him the story.
Wow.
It
Yeah.
would have been common knowledge in the neighborhood among the survivors.
Right.
And again, he said, "You'll never hear me tell this story again." That he was a skeptic, but he knew what he saw. It scared the living bejesus out of him to the point where he had to go under the table, hide, and then he passed out in fear.
Ooh.
Woo!
Like the thumbnail. Ooh.
Yes, that's the story.
You know what's funny? That's from a skeptic, and so he believed in some way, or he at least give some validity to it. And him
Yes,
being a child, that's why he was able to see. He was so
yes.
open before, and probably in the family, you all are gifted.
Not
So
my father's side, no. They're very stern British, not goofy Benny Hill kind of British, There's all different types. But I am wearing my Newcastle
well, they
shirt to represent,
awesome. I mean, I do believe it's in your father's side, even though they're like that. But
I
in
think he had
general,
it. Yeah.
yeah, in general, kids are open. You don't have to be psychic.
I'm wrong. Thank you for correcting me, actually, Sylvia. I just remembered there was a time I went over to Newcastle by myself. That was when I bought this shirt, actually. It was 1990. And I went over there for my 20th birthday, and my aunt, who was his older sister, and she looked the most like him, she told me that her mother, Septina, used to get her tea leaves read on the weekends, every weekend.
Oh my God.
Something he never told me because I don't even think she admitted it to him.
Right.
Well, and then I ended up reading tea leaves, her namesake.
Oh,
Yeah,
funny.
thank you. I forgot all about that.
Yeah, it's funny. First of all, I have this. Most of us who are into the already know that. Well, everybody's had intuition. If you're alive, you're an energetic being. You have intuition, and but not everybody may be psychic per se, which is basically the same, but a little step up. Because maybe it's in their family line, or maybe it's in their life path, or maybe they even worked at it. You could work at being more in tune. But like your father's example, not only he had it in his family already, but he was a child, and the child, that's when they tend to see more. So that's amazing. And it's funny that you share that, because I was sharing with Septina behind the scene that I was going to show a picture, but it's a really crappy picture to begin with. Of my woo experience. But then I saw another picture before that, which made me doubt my woo experience. So sometimes um, the woo experience wasn't a woo, but sometimes it is a woo, but there are things that maybe might show like it wasn't. So this is where it's like I wouldn't want to show this picture and put that out there. But that's part of being uh, working on your intuition, to not only admit when it's not real, because if I get embarrassed because I thought it was an orb, meanwhile it shows evidence it was from the sun, and I don't admit it, my spiritual growth can grow, because there's no such thing as perfection. But sometimes I've had woo experience where kind of I can even show it that it's not real, so it's kind of dismissing it. So it's just an art. It's an art to it. But this is a great example, like her father, who never showed that side, decided to share that. That's amazing.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. And that's woo even for me. So why did I create it woo even for me? Because even though this is nothing new, there's so many videos that talk about their woo experience. Um, I have found from doing this organization, they have a thing where they start it, because of where it's planetary wise and from the country. They have experience where you have honey coming out of the picture, and you have like you receive soma water, things like that. So me and my friend Angela, even though we had woo experience, and we've been into this for a long time, a lifetime, I noticed all the programming doubt that came to play. So like somebody's like, oh, I believe in woo experience, I believe in ghosts, I can hear it and I can see it. But when you see it, when and it's going to happen more and more in 2024 and beyond. When you start seeing it more and more in the physical, the mind will start playing trick with you. Not for everybody. I can't speak for everybody. So I'm only sharing from my experience, because I shouldn't speak for Septina or anybody. But I noticed my mind would being tricked, like, because I do have that practical side. Oh, that's too small. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. So this is all part of the woo, even for me. So it's also, I find that most people start remembering more when they share. So that's why I want to bring more into this once a month at least. And so it will, even for me, it's very important to acknowledge it. Remember, ever since I watched Septina video, one of her video, and it makes sense. I used to think like that. We talked about the 4 cup, which goes well with her father experience. And if you're on this channel, if you're like on Septina's channel or mine, it's likely you already believe in the woo. But as the planetary keep ascending, more and more people will. It's going to be so mainstream. It's already becoming more mainstream. But just like anything, it's also being abused. Right, Septina?
Yeah. There's I see 2 sides to that coin of abuse. Is the and the side of it where there's spiritual bypassing, where there's no room for debunking or practical answers, and then there's the skeptic side of it.
Yeah. So here, what Septina, you want to share? Could I already been sharing what my thought is, but I would like her to share about what you were sharing about to give validity to your woo experience. Remember, so I'll let her share.
Yes, that card came out a couple months ago. It was still warm. I remember I was out on the balcony and you were in that live, and the 4 of Cups came out in that reading, and it seems to have come into a few of both of our readings since then with this message of don't ignore it. When it's a new gift or talent that comes to you, when it's a new form of communication from spirit, from passed on loved ones, from whatever it is that can do you some good. We're not pairing this card with a romantic opportunity. This is about us not ignoring talents, gifts, and opportunities that we might not have considered before or been open to before,
Yeah, and funny because if you guys read the tarot, and even if you don't, you can see here, the card has always been about like not noticing what's being presented. Could be a natural thing or divine. So kind of cool to see it in that way. It makes sense. I was getting Stein, but when I saw it in the card, look, she's only looking at this, what's in front of her, but not even looking at what the universe is giving. So that's what we do a lot. We dismiss our woo experience, and especially when we do have a woo experience and we find out it's not real. Then we listen to that doubt or like, oh, everything must be like that. No, it's not everything. Just because sometimes it is like that does not mean it's like that. So her father was having this experience, but he was young enough to really believe it, because when they told him about the nurse, he realized I couldn't make that stuff up. But a lot of people like her father are like this, where they don't pay attention to the woo. There you go. Yeah.
See how it's spirit. This is, some people will describe it as a gift from God, or a godly gift, a spiritual message. This is a ghostly hand, disembodied ghostly hand, trying to show this gentleman something very important. And he's like, I don't see it. I don't want to see it, even if it's right in front of me.
Yeah.
And then right under that was the Tower card. Yeah, it can be shocking. It can be shocking to get these messages coming to you, but look at it. Look at it.
And eventually it becomes more natural. You know what I mean? I mean, I wish I was a little more creative, but I always use the same example. not everything is always coming out of the sky unseen to unseen. Sometimes it's the most practical with the phone. If we have been told 30 years ago that you could do all this stuff on the phone, that's a woo. Like sometimes very advanced science is a woo.
Yes.
So that's like a physical. I mean, a lot of our phones they have quartz crystals in it, right? I don't know. But I'm just saying, like, they're the unseen, literally. Then you have the sci-fi. In the old Star Trek movie, not the movie, the show. Remember they used to have like the tablet thing and they used to have the phone thing. Now we're seeing it in our lifetime.
And
So,
can I add to that, woo, where you showed the phone and you said sometimes science and technology is woo? Well,
mhm.
let's add to that by saying some of that technology was discovered from the UFOs that they're investigating at Area 51, is it? Come on, right? It's
Yeah.
possible. We don't have proof, but we're pretty darn sure.
And now you have those ghost investigators. Speaking of ghosts, now they have all these tools. They can hear the ghost speaking. You could see them. So
Even
sometimes,
some of that is crappy, though,
of course,
Yeah.
but just that goes example. Just because they are real, there's also things that are not real, and this is where we have to learn how to. I think the more I go, oh, I thought that was a real experience, but it wasn't. The better I can not allow that doubt to creep in. Just be like, okay, just learning the art of, dealing with the seen and unseen. So anything, you
Exactly.
guys hear anything from that? What do you think about that? Her father telling her about that? That's amazing.
The reason he brought it up too, and this is going to be fun for you guys of our age.
Of our age.
We were right. Do you remember when Disney used to put on those made for TV movies at nighttime and the whole family would gather around their tube television and watch? Back in the days of Return to Witch Mountain. Do you remember that one? Return to Witch Mountain. Anybody here in the chat remember that old? They redid it with The Rock and made it a movie, but it was originally one of those Disney movies. And there was one where they redid a story about a ghost in a wishing well. Gordon Lightfoot even sang a song about it. About a ghost from a wishing well. Yeah, just like an old time movie. Redbeard remembers. So we were watching this movie and there was a little girl's spirit trapped in a wishing well. And well, I was just so over the moon about this movie. And I think it was because we watched that movie that he said, okay, I've got a story for you, but don't ever ask me to tell it again.
So everybody, other people
Teresa
did.
remembers, yes.
Yeah. That was great because back in the day there wasn't a lot of like different kind of entertainment. The family
No,
actually used to get together and watch these
it's
things.
true. It was a big event for the family, and everyone could afford because you didn't have to pay for cable. You just had to have the TV. That's the only
Yeah.
thing you had to buy. And you had kids who would walk over and turn the knob to change the channel for you.
And let's speak more on the woo. The fact that you were sharing, and this is probably in a lot of our families, nothing unique. Especially back in the day, they had to rely on herbs and stuff before
Mhm.
medicine came to be. So a lot about like my grandmother, it wasn't a known thing that she would thank it until later on, but she used to play with herbs, things like that. So that's like a normal thing that people did before the 1800s. That's just, but her grandmother was doing tea leaves. Think of the book banning and all the religious persecution. How many history we lost? We have seen in modern day in American history where they're banning books. So imagine all the book banning beforehand, all the things we don't know about. Let's see what Fatima said.
I find that very interesting, I believe, because I have experienced people communicating with us from the other side. Yes, because we're open to it.
Yeah. But I think the reason why a lot of people are not open to it, besides religion, it's not because sometimes the woo is not the woo, and you
Yeah.
need the practical. But it's also because I think they've been prevented. A lot of it prevented. Like you hear about
Pushed
the witches.
down. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just like my
suppressed.
father even said, don't ever ask me this story again because I don't enjoy discussing it because I don't want to believe it, but I do know it happened. It's like
Yeah.
even ignoring it, but knowing it truly happened.
And now you triggered something in me, but I don't remember the story too much. My father, I remember we didn't talk about these things, but I remember he was sharing. I don't even remember the story, but I remember being surprised he was sharing how he had a woo experience. Wasn't like a childhood thing like you, but let's say he said something like, "Oh, I believe in something." I don't remember, but it's triggering in me, like something we would never talk about. My dad, and he said something like he had an experience, which I don't remember. So it's interesting how much we suppress, because again, the people back in the day had to be practical. They were living from, what do you call it, fight, flight. They didn't have time to think about the woo experience. But I mean, the Native American, all the indigenous, and that's including like the Irish people. They have the fairy stories. I mean, every nationality, culture, it's not just an indigenous thing. It's just part of. And so going forward, especially with artificial intelligence, it's very important to tap into your intuition at this time so we could tell the difference between the two.
Yes,
But
yes,
again, it's going to be an art. Sometimes you're wrong, sometimes you're right.
that's right.
Mostly right though. But what happened is, if I have a wrong experience, if I'm not in a healthy state of mind, I can make that be like that four cup. Then I don't pay attention to spirit for a while because I don't trust it. So the four cup constantly remind us that just because these things are with evidence does not mean that this is not real.
Right. Don't
I
let
love
one
seeing that
bad
four cup.
experience poison everything else.
Exactly. So let's see, what did
Fight or flight, that's a human response. It is very 3D human response. Just like even when my father's family were trying to debunk all of the possibilities of where he may or may not be, fight or flight, he might very well be in the farmer's field stealing food. Even though we feed our children, it's not enough. And that's okay because we're not the only family in England in the 40s who don't have enough food for their kids.
yeah,
It's just the way it was.
right. Yeah, yeah. And that's woo woo even for me. So if you experience a relative sharing story, write it down. Cause now I wish I wrote it down what my father said. It wasn't like it was some kind of woo experience, but I just remembered enough to be like, oh, seeing my dad in a different side, because that's not something we would ever talk about. And when I had a spiritual reading, she said, "You have your family from all sides are spiritually in tune." So, and none of them really practiced it. So, how suppressed is that?
Very suppressed and depressing at the same time, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, anybody had the woo experience before we close this video?
I think those are very difficult things to type out because it's usually quite detailed, you know? It's hard. Okay, I saw a ghost when I was 8. End of story. No, we want to know more.
I know. I remember Fatima trying to share it. It took a while.
It's a lot. Like that story I just told you, I couldn't have possibly typed it out,
Just
right?
like still, I have so many woo experience. I mean, she didn't say it, but I could hear it. But I can't type it out. My sister-in-law came to me and said I saw my grandfather in the cemetery.
Oh, wow, that's so nice.
Yeah, I shared experience like a lot of time, which you guys may remember, having all these what I thought with imagination, because sometimes it is imagination. But once in a while, when I get uh like, oh, that was real, I'm like, holy moly. Sometimes it's real, sometimes it's imagination. Like I was seeing, I shared this that I was at my friend's house at 16, and I sleep over once in a while. Every time I used to feel weird in there, you know what I mean? But didn't think anything of it because I used to feel funny stuff all the time. And then another time I had experience with her mother Mary image where I saw it come alive. But at 16 years old, we were not that deep. We certainly did not talk about spirituality stuff. We were coming from Catholic high school and all that. So connecting with her 30 years later, I shared her with that, and she had proven there was something to that statue and that her apartment was haunted, but not haunted scary. It's just that they used to see like strange things. So that made me go, oh my God. So that was the period of time I realized that some of the things, what I thought was imagination, was not. But sometimes it's just imagination.
And
You
look
know,
at how many years you had to go without that answer.
I never thought it would. And it's not something, I don't know what made me share that too. So that was just the timing that the divine made me share it, so I would have that experience.
Right.
So tell me, what's your next
And I always wonder,
what is your next plan for this year with your channel before we
Me?
close? Yeah. Like for
Oh,
me, I was sharing like I'm gonna continue with this at least one more year and then reevaluate.
I don't do that. I don't plan. I was doing that actually before I got monetized because my initial plan was to get at least 1,000 subscribers. That was my only goal.
And you
And
got
I
it.
achieved that goal. Now I let my intuition guide me on what content I'm going to create, how long and how long I'm going to create it for. I'll never
Yeah.
delete the channel because
Right.
there's important stuff on the channel. I can hide the
Yeah.
channel's stuff if I ever want to just not use it anymore. But, that's really it.
That's awesome. So Fatima, I think a lot of people have that where they have stories they don't tell. And then like when I hear stories from my aunt or my uncle, like now in their 70s, and they share something that I'm like, how come you never shared this before? It just wasn't timing. I think there was a timing too why we hear it. Also, sometimes they may have shared it and we weren't open to it.
Yeah.
So, all right.
I
Okay.
have I have
What?
stories of my own, but none were as profound as what my father described, So let's do more of these, Sylvia. And if any of you have a channel and you would like to show your face on camera with us, join us for a woo-woo. Just contact Sylvia and she'll book you in for the time and dates that work for her.
I think that worked better because like I noticed like when I asked you guys like too much. So it's one of those things you could do the StreamYard up to 10 people and
Right.
share it. And this is the time to do it because when you share, it's not even about like just sharing and yada yada yada. But what I've noticed is when you share your miracles, I've heard spiritual people say this. When you share your miracle and you share and you give validity, like the 4 cup, divine will give you more of that.
Yes.
It will give you more of that. If I keep denying or dismissing, and what I noticed, I don't dismiss it, but I noticed I'm a little too worried what people think sometime, or I'm worried about what if that was real or not. I'm just sharing, and I'll tell you, I don't know if this is the actual thing. Certain things, I'm like, this is for sure. But the more we do that, the more, and these are the things that if anything like religion or anything, they want to suppress us, and plus we want more miracles in our life. So why not share it?
Right?
Alrighty, so take care and
Thanks for
see you
joining
later.
us. Bye.